when you get the knockbacks, don't take it personally. I remember applying for work experience, applied to 50 law firms, didn't get anything.
And those people kind of are the bookends of the legal world, but the best lawyers are those in the middle.
To me, it feels much more kind of collegiate. You're like working together.
Allegedly, David Higgins moved from Freshfields to Kirkland on a salary of $10 million a year.
Today, we are talking careers in law and becoming a lawyer, and in particular, a solicitor. The word lawyer is an umbrella term used to describe a qualified person advising clients, this being individuals, businesses, and government, on legal matters. In the UK, law students decide whether to branch down the route of becoming a solicitor or a barrister. Simplified as much as possible, barristers tend to practice as advocates representing clients in court. They're the people wearing the wigs who say objection a lot, whereas solicitors tend to perform the majority of their legal work in a law firm or office setting. The focus of this episode will be the latter. With me today, I have 3 solicitors, all at the top of their game, who will share their insights and advice. So now let us meet them. Guys, welcome. Can I just ask you all to please introduce yourselves and just tell us a bit about your background and your A-levels? And can we start with you, please, Izzy?
Okay, hi, I'm Izzy Hirschman. I'm almost 2 years qualified, an associate at Norton Rose Fulbright. I'm in the real estate department there. So A-levels, I did English literature, French, and philosophy and ethics. Then I took a gap year, and then I went to study English and French at University of Leeds. And then I did the GDL followed by the LPC. So GDL is graduate diploma in law, which you have to do if you don't do a law degree, and then LPC is legal practice course. And then, yeah, here I am.
Superb. And Davina, can you intro yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. Hi, James. Hi, everyone. My name is Davina Rana. I'm a lawyer at Fried Frank, which is a US law firm in the City of London. I did history, sociology, psychology, and English literature as A-levels, and then went on to read law at the London School of Economics. I'm also a real estate lawyer.
Superb. And Piers, can you intro yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm Piers Harris, and I'm also at Fried Frank, a colleague of Davina's. I actually work in a different department, which is the asset management department. We can come on and discuss that a bit later. I did English, geography, and history at A-level. I then went to Durham University. I did do law. So unlike Izzy, I didn't need to do the GDL. I just did the legal practice course, which is a kind of vocational course teaching you about the world of law before doing my training contract in London.
Smashing. And Piers, we're on you, and I'm just going to chuck this right at you. Can you just talk us through what a career in law actually means?
Well, so law affects everyone in their day-to-day lives, right? It's a huge term that captures everything. Obviously, the people's most frequent interaction with it is through criminal law and an understanding of crime, and as you said, TV documentaries, whatever, with people standing up in court and talking. What we all do is much more corporate focused, and it is a world away from that. So, everyone interacts with lawyers for writing their wills or buying their houses or those kind of things. What we do instead is actually represent companies and businesses and help them with their day-to-day activities, whether that be, in my circumstance, helping clients collect, raise money in order to help them buy businesses, or the kind of more commercial and corporate real estate, the buying and selling of properties and shopping centres and things like that, like Davina and Izzy do. So it really is a huge world, but we're quite a niche part of it that helps corporates and businesses with their day-to-day activities.
I think it's good to add that obviously there's the 2 sides of the law that a lot of people don't always know about. So we're solicitors, as Piers said. So we're the guys that sit in the offices and do a lot of the drafting of the documents. But if a case is remember, not everything goes to court. So things go to court when something goes wrong. So normally day-to-day law is, like Piers said, the buying of houses, the writing of wills. A lot of that stuff is just done by people like us who are solicitors. When something needs to be taken to a court, you need to instruct a barrister, because barristers are the only ones that have, it's called rights to stand in front of a judge and represent people in court. So often solicitors are required to instruct barristers, and a lot of that goes down to what Piers was saying about how there are lots of different areas of law you can practice. So Piers does something we call funds and asset management. Izzy and I do real estate, where we buy and sell basically big buildings. But there are loads of people that do litigation, which is what barristers do. There are people that do tax law. There are people that do finance law. So there's so many different specialisms within that word of law.
Brilliant. And I think you know, we'll find out what's made you go down your each of your branches that you've selected. But Izzy, can you just talk us through your specific role and what your, you know, what you have to do in your job?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm obviously only 2 years qualified, so I'm kind of one of the most junior people in my team. But what we do is transactional real estate. So we act for landlords and tenants, or buyers and sellers of commercial property. So often we will do due diligence on a property, check that everything is as it should be, and report to the client and say, look, this is the situation. Do you still want to buy it? Do you still want to take this lease for 10 years or whatever? And then obviously we draft all the documentation and liaise with the lawyers on the other side. And yeah, just facilitate the transaction basically. Yeah, Davina, do you want to add anything? Because you do the same thing.
No, yeah, of course. So, like Izzy said, in a high street, so if you think about your high street solicitors you might go into, you'd go in and speak to a solicitor, you'd give them instructions, that solicitor would then take your instructions away and try and do what you want them to do. So if it is a case of buying a house, like Izzy said, they'll diligence the house. That means checking the public registers of the property, making sure everything's okay, making sure that that house can be lived in, making sure it's safe, making sure it's got simple things like electricity and water supplies, things like that. Then if you're doing a will, for example, it's the same thing. As you go in, you instruct your solicitor, you give them instructions, you tell them what to do. The solicitor then goes away, types everything up, writes it all up in legal speak. And that's one thing that's really important. A lot of the stuff that people think we do is complicated. It's actually not. We just speak a separate legal language, let's put it that way. So that's what we're skilled in.
Really like that. And Piers, talk us through what you do, and you have told me in the past, and I always struggle to understand this. So, so do your best.
Izzy and Davina have it much easier in explaining what they do than I do. In effect, what I do is described as setting up private equity funds. But what that means really is helping people collect money from various investors. And these investors are things like people's pension plans, or quite often it's money from governments. So they collect all this cash from various investors, and then they use that money to buy and sell businesses. And the idea being that they buy a business, they help improve that business, and then they sell it on at a profit at a later point in time. And the idea is then that profit is used to pay back the investors' money, and also in effect an interest rate on the fact that they've borrowed that from them. So really it's about helping the investment world. But a lot of big businesses, a lot of big brands, fashion brands, restaurants, things like that are owned by private equity funds. And what I do is not the buying and selling of the business itself. I deal with the contractual relationships between the fund and the various investors. So I'm dealing with the pension plans and people have to put their money into this big pot so that person that is responsible can go and use it to buy and sell businesses.
So my understanding is the purpose of lawyers is to provide peace of mind to the people that are using the lawyers, so that if stuff goes wrong, they're protected. Is that essentially it?
I think that's a really good summary of it. In effect, we're quite often just an insurance policy for our clients. All they do is they pay us to, as Davina says, draft documents in legal speak. And the idea is that sets out the whole relationship between the businesses. And then in due course, if something goes wrong, someone can go back to that document and say, oh no, you didn't pay us when you said you were going to pay us, or you didn't do what you're obliged to do. And then the next step, as Davina says, if things go wrong and they escalate, that's when things can end up in court.
Which is beautiful, because you are always in demand. You're never going to not be needed in society. So we like that. Let's move on. I want to know the inspiration. You know, how did you decide that becoming a lawyer was what you wanted to do? And Davina, can I chuck that at you to start with, please?
Okay, please don't judge me about this, but this is genuinely my inspiration. So one of my dad's friends, I was 10 years old at the time. She came to my dad's house and was like, I looked at her, I was like, oh my God, I want to wear pearls and I want high heels. That was genuinely my inspiration. I was like, what does that woman do? I want to do that. But obviously when you think about it, my parents explained that, you know, she works really hard, she has a really demanding job, she represents people, she works for all these important clients, and that's why I was like it kind of suited me. I wanted a nice life with the nice things that a good job provide, and I wanted a respectable career as well. And I think law is definitely that. It's like you said, James, it's one of those careers that people are always going to need lawyers. It's very stable. There are good times and bad times, but you always need lawyers. When I was just about to go to university, Ally McBeal was the TV show that everyone was obsessed with. And it was like, oh, lawyers look so cool. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Now, if you want a comparison, it's probably Suits. But it's not always that cool, guys. That's what I would say.
Nice. Well, I've been to some of the social functions with you lawyers there, and they're always an interesting and fun engagement. So anyway, Izzy, I'm going to chuck the question at you. What inspired you? What made you want to be a lawyer?
So for me, it was, similarly when I was young. My dad was a lawyer. He was a barrister though. So I kind of always thought that I'd like to follow in his footsteps. But he specialised in family law, which is obviously very different to what I do. But I basically kind of chatted to all his colleagues or his friends and tried to find out all about it, and asked to go and shadow them. I was probably so annoying. I asked to go and shadow them all the time and just kind of find out what they were doing. And so, it was that basically. And I wanted to have a challenging and interesting career, and also, do something that could give me a nice lifestyle and that I would enjoy. So.
Fair enough. And Piers, a similar story for you? What's the deal here?
Yes, similar story. It was actually my dad's business was being bought when I was about 14, 15. And as part of that, I started speaking to my dad about what the actual process entailed. And one of the things was that the government got involved in that purchase because it was imposing competition restrictions on the businesses, because they can't have too many businesses, or rather one massive business dominating a market. And this was one big business buying another big business. And I just found that very interesting. It was just one of those things that, I asked more questions and started thinking about it in the day-to-day context. And I think it just suited my sensibilities. I was, I think if you tend to be quite analytical and interested in detail, then that's some law really lends itself to those kind of personalities. And the more I found out about it, the more actually I thought that it was probably something I would aim for. And then it's one of those things that was really why I decided to do law at university. Notwithstanding that, I still wasn't entirely sure I actually wanted to be a lawyer, because you don't have to be a lawyer if you have a law degree, because it's a very good degree to have going forward anyway.
Did you know when you'd applied to do, when you wanted to become a lawyer, did you realise that you wanted to definitely be a solicitor, or were you still very open-minded at that stage? Piers, we'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the route, whether I wanted to be a solicitor or a barrister, I did think about being a barrister. And again, I did a law degree, so you learn a lot about the court cases, and the barristers in those situations are obviously they're the ones speaking, and they're the advocates. So I learned quite a lot through my law degree. When I actually then looked into it a bit more, I felt as though a solicitor, because I tend to like advising clients on the running of business. In a strange way, I don't overly like law insofar as the technical detail of law. I would rather be having a more commercial discussion with a business about how it achieves its end goals. And really that's much more suited to a solicitor, because a barrister has to be really into the detail of law, because quite often they're not necessarily talking about what the client thinks. They're actually talking about what all the legal precedent and what all those, you know, the big law books that you see in the movies, they have to dig through those to find a really, really small particle of detail from some old-fashioned case and then use that going forward. And that didn't appeal to me so much.
I would just add that I think, obviously, being a barrister, you work on your own a lot more. You're self-employed, and when you're working on a case, it's probably only you and maybe a junior working together, whereas as solicitors, we're part of a team and we normally all work together, and you have a lot of kind of internal meetings and you discuss a transaction. And yeah, it feels kind of, to me, it feels much more kind of collegiate. You're like working together, whereas yeah, as a barrister, you are very much on your own.
Moving on, I'd like to know, you know, I want to know what your day-to-day life looks like. So can you talk us through a typical day, you know, going to the office, whatever it looks like? Davina, can we start with you on that, please?
Yeah, of course. So lawyers infamously known, or city solicitors are infamously known as starting later than most people. So we tend to get into the office around between 9 and 9:30, maybe even 10 o'clock some days. You get in, you will have calls in your diary, or you may have meetings that you need to attend to. Most of that is managed through email. So we'll be constantly checking emails to make sure we know what needs to be done. Say I'm working on a transaction, I may that day be specialising just doing drafting all day. I might need to have a call with the client to discuss certain points in the drafting. So going back to real estate, if we're buying a property, then I might need to talk to my client about, are you really interested in this tenant you've got in this building, or you know, there's this problem in this building, so how do you want to deal with it? How should we deal with it? So it really depends. So your day is split between basically calls with clients and calls with lawyers on the other side. Meetings, it could be internal meetings as well, so management of the business, talking to other people in your team about how. And the other thing you've got to remember is that law firms are businesses. We are all charged with making sure that we are going out and selling our services, because clients don't just randomly turn up at your door and say, we want you to do our work. So we're all responsible for making sure that people know our business, who we are, what we do. So we always constantly doing business development initiatives, they call them. So days can be split doing all sorts of things like that.
I think part of working in a big law firm means that there are lots of other things that you can get involved in too. So for example, I'm on the charity committee, and we often have meetings at lunchtime or different times throughout the day and talk about kind of new initiatives or new projects that we want to get involved in. And then there's other things like I play netball for the firm and stuff like that. So there are lots of other kind of things that you can be doing around your day-to-day life.
I'm with you. Now let's get to the point. So are we talking like open plan office? You can see all your colleagues around you. Is that how it looks? Is that the landscape?
Well, I think it's different for everyone, but we've actually just moved into, we have either 3-person or 5-person offices now. Okay. But yeah, they're all separate. So it's not kind of, for us, it's not open plan still, but I don't know. What about you guys? I'm not sure if it.
So we all have nice, and is the same, nice brand spanking buildings in the middle of the city, which is all very nice. But even within that, American law firms tend to have quite discrete offices. So we do actually now share offices, but that's quite a new development. It used to just be each person to their office. Notwithstanding that, it is the whole environment is encouraged within the team to allow people to talk to each other. So you're constantly going into other people's offices. You're constantly having calls in other people's offices. I think my day sounds very similar, obviously in a different area, but very similar to Izzy's and Davina's. But what I would say is that, so as you get more senior, the way your day looks changes. So initially you're there, in effect, for the first year or so, you are the general dog's body. You're doing lots and lots of work for lots of different people. You are doing some of the drafting, but it's obviously heavily reviewed by your supervisors. And it's much more about a learning process. And quite often you're in meetings just to sit there and listen and learn and take notes. And as you get more senior, and I'm now 8 years qualified, and actually quite often my day now is just full of phone calls and full of meetings in a way that, and you know, these are calls and meetings that I'm having either on my own or with a junior lawyer by the side of me taking notes. And that's the shift. You kind of change your seats, if you like, to get closer to the phone and closer to the actual meetings with people. And that, you know, you do see a real shift, and it's kind of the mid, you know, we really do talk about junior lawyers, mid-level lawyers, and then senior associates, and then partners. And actually that concept, those 3 stages, you really do see a shift in how your day looks. And my day is far more full of calls and meetings than it was when I was a junior lawyer.
I'm with you. And then let's just talk about what you like most about being a lawyer or being a solicitor. Can you talk us through that, Piers? And are there any peak moments you've experienced?
Yeah, I again, what I like about it is that it is very intellectually stimulating. And it can be intellectually demanding quite a lot of the time, which comes with its own stresses and difficulties, but it means that you're never bored. You're always striving to do more and understand more. And again, no one understands everything, and there's always going to be things to learn and always things to develop. So it really does mean that you keep yourself occupied, no matter how senior you are or how long you've been doing it. And again, there are stresses and strains to that. You know, we are at the end of the day a service provider. Our clients demand a lot from us, because for them, and it's important to recognize this, and sometimes we forget it, for them, quite often, the things that they're talking to us about are the biggest deals they've ever done in their lives. These are enormous things for the client.
Sure.
For us, we do it every day. We just do it with a different client, but we've always got to be conscious of that and spend time thinking, yes, they're being unreasonable, or yes, they're being demanding, but acknowledging that actually for them, this is huge. And so it's on us to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible.
Davina, how about you? Favorite parts of being a lawyer?
I would say I remember the first time that a project I was working on was in the newspaper and in the news generally, and that was you realize that even though you think you're doing a small part of it, that everyone in the world knows about it. Especially with property, everything we do is really what they call tangible. You can see it, you can feel it. Sure. So one of the big things I did as a trainee was working on the Westfield shopping centres, and I remember when Westfield opened, and I was like, I'm one of the cogs, I suppose, that helped that open. It's quite cool.
And I really enjoy the relationship side of it as well. So obviously getting to know clients, and then you have kind of social things with them, and yeah, you're forming that relationship and kind of working together, which is really nice.
Well, I'm fascinated when we get to talking about the skills, because it seems to me that you've got to be sharp as a tack, but also interpersonal, so that you can be responsive and empathetic to your clients' needs, I guess. But we'll get onto that shortly. Let's deal with this. Let's give impartial advice here. Talk to me about the challenging parts of being a lawyer, being a solicitor. Not a nice question, but Piers, I'm putting this one to you to start with, please.
Well, again, I think that, you know, it is notorious, the hours and the demands and the stress of these intense relationships. It goes back to what I was saying. Obviously, the clients want this done as quickly as possible all the time. And quite often we're the ones that bear the brunt of that. So we're the ones that unfortunately can be in the office at 3 a.m. drafting documents to be able to provide them back to the client by their first thing their morning. And again, one of the great things about what we do is it's very international, and we work across the world. You know, I was on a call on Monday with China, you know, and this is very, very often you're dealing with that kind of stuff. But inevitably that does mean you're on conference calls at, you know, 11 o'clock at night, or it could be because you're dealing with the west coast of the US, or, you know, there are lots of different factors that put pressures on our time and our hours.
Sure.
And I think it goes back to what the law firm has to be. And as Izzy said earlier, the law firms are very collegiate, and they're full of people in exactly the same situation. And so actually that kind of shared stress, in effect, actually brings everyone closer together, and it means it's a really nice environment in which to work. You know.
The other thing you've got to remember is most lawyers, they've done really well at school, they've done really well at A-levels, they did really well at university. Then you get into this world where actually no one ever trained you to be a lawyer. You learn on the job. So you're constantly learning new things every day. So you're never going to be perfect at it when you first start. And actually for the first time in your life, you're like, wow, this is hard and I've never done this before and I'm not that good at this, and that is really, really hard to learn to deal with.
Yeah, I don't think you ever, well, speaking to senior people in my team, you don't ever feel like you know everything. So
Sure.
you're always going to be learning. So yeah, it's challenging, but also that I think that's why it's rewarding at the same time.
Sure, it's this whole concept of lifelong learning. And there's recent statistics on this, actually. People are happier in their jobs if they feel like they're progressing. And I think law sounds like you're always learning and always getting better. Izzy, we'll stick to you. Can you just talk us through the routes to becoming to becoming a lawyer, be it a solicitor or a barrister, please?
Okay, so you can either do a law degree like Piers did. I don't know whether Davina did as well, but or you can do, yeah, you did. So, or you can do a non-law degree like me, so English and French. And then if you do a non-law degree, then you have to do the graduate diploma in law, which is a 1-year kind of squished law degree, basically, where you study the kind of key areas of law. So you do like criminal law, contract, land law, lots of different areas. And then everyone at the moment still has to do the LPC, which is the kind of, as Piers was saying earlier, the kind of vocational course that you do just before you start your training contract. So yeah, once you've done all of that, you start your training contract, and you will usually have to have got AAB, A-level, and probably a 2-1 in your degree from university, but that does differ depending on what firm you decide to go to. And then your training contract is 2 years, and in that 2 years you rotate between different departments in your firm. So it's kind of a chance for you to experience like the different areas of law. As Davina was saying earlier, it could be tax or real estate or corporate, and it's kind of, it's almost like a 2-year interview in a way, because you're trying to impress them, because at the end of the 2 years it's not guaranteed that you get taken on and have a job. So you're trying to impress them, but you're also trying to work out which area you want to be in. So yeah, it's a two-way thing, basically.
Let's go for the question of how much do lawyers and solicitors particularly earn from one starting out, maybe on their training contract, and then once you're established. Anyone want to jump in and answer this question?
I don't mind talking about it. What I would say, a massive overwhelming caveat on this, is it varies enormously. And again, this goes back to, I think, what I said right at the beginning, that law can be anything and you can do it anywhere. Obviously, 3 of us are all solicitors in the City of London. And so we, as a result, relative to salaries elsewhere, ours will be higher. Again, even within the City of London, there's quite a big disparity over the types of firms as to how much you can potentially earn. A few years ago, the American firms started coming over, and it led to quite a big inflation of salaries, because they came in and started paying a lot more than other law firms. And what
Great for you guys.
Well, exactly. But whatever inevitably that leads to a lot of people leaving British firms to go and work at US firms.
Sure.
And so the British firms then had to raise their salaries to try and compete. So, I mean, in terms of the market, I mean, the very top of the market with the US firms, I think, and I don't have the actual statistics in front of me, but I think it's something in the region of you can earn between £40,000 and £50,000 as a trainee. So that for those two-year periods. But then on qualification, there is actually quite a significant jump. And I think as a newly qualified lawyer at certain US law firms, I think you're in the region of £140,000 a year as a starting salary. So and then there's, it progresses as you get more senior. So it's significant money. I mean, but again, this is the very, very top of the market. There is a huge disparity amongst different types of firms, and different firms, don't demand quite as much as a result.
Sure.
if you want a better work-life balance, it might impact your starting salary, but you may have a much nicer way of living. So yeah, I would say there's huge difference. And then obviously as you progress, it kind of is relatively linear. It's quite weird in law relative to other industries, because pretty much every year there will be some sort of increase without there being, you know, a promotion. Your promotion really is the fact that you haven't been fired. You're there every single year, and in effect it is very cutthroat, right? And you have to be on top of your game in order to stay at these firms. But every year, as a result, you're an additional year qualified, which deems you to be more senior and therefore earn more. There isn't, you know, you don't have internal promotion interviews and those kind of things that you might have in other jobs until you hit the point of partner. I mean, some do it for senior associates and those kind of thresholds, but really it's partner is the big different step up, which, you know, for most people happens kind of 10 to 15 year qualified. You'll be in part of the discussion as to whether or not you'd be a partner. And
are you guaranteed, if you're loyal to a law firm and you're good at your job, to become a partner?
Absolutely not. No, it's a really difficult process to be made a partner. Obviously, it is. You know, that there is being a partner at a law firm really means exactly that. It's an old style corporate structure where you share in the profits of the partnership. So you're no longer an employee, and it's a real big difficult step to get that. And really, it's not necessarily about how good you are. It's quite often much more about what your relationships bring to the firm. So as a partner, you're expected, as Davina was saying, everyone is expected to do business development and to develop relationships with clients. But as a partner, your clients tend to be loyal to you, and you have to foster those relationships. And you'll see in the market, some lawyers will go from one law firm to another, some partners, and they'll take their clients with them. So the clients are their value, really, to the law firm. But in terms of salaries and pay and stuff, that once you become partner, everything goes into a black box. You know, no one really knows how much any of the particular partners earn. But to put it into perspective, again, at the very top of the game with the US law firms, allegedly, David Higgins moved from Freshfields to Kirkland on a salary of $10 million a year. So, you know,
this is great information. You're giving me gold here. Keep going, Piers.
I mean, there is just absolutely crazy money there, but obviously this is a absolute tiny sliver of the world in which lawyers work. And again, it's driven a lot by the US law firms, I think.
I really like that answer. Brilliant. Let's move on. Just let's get some advice to young people now. So let's say they've watched this, they're pretty certain they do want to be lawyers. What can someone in school be doing now to maximize their chances of getting a job in law? Any advice on that? Izzy, have you got anything to say on that?
I would say just kind of try and talk to people, try to go to events and stuff. Lots of universities or lots of law firms actually have open days and things like that you can go to quite early on. And I think when you're applying for a training contract, what the people interviewing will want to see is that you actually really do want to do that as your career. I think it's definitely less about what you know about law and more about a kind of real desire to want to pursue that. So yeah, I think the more people that you can talk to and find out about what it's actually really like is really, really useful. And yeah, if you know, obviously it's great to have contacts, or you can kind of find names of people, which is what I used to do, and email them and say, could I just come and shadow you, or even just have a phone call with you? To be fair, I did that to Piers quite a lot, didn't I? Like, can I talk to you? Can you tell me what it's like? How do I do this? How do I do that? And yeah, it's just asking people all the time if you can.
Brilliant. Davina, do you have any thoughts on this? What people can be doing now to help them get a career in this?
I think obviously experience is like probably the number one thing, and it doesn't matter where you get that experience. Law firms have loads of different parts of them as well. They have finance teams, you know, they have secretarial teams. Anywhere you can go to see how that business works is a really good way to get that experience. From like a more practical level, I suppose, if you want to look attractive to, if you know you want to become a solicitor and you want to get to a good university, it's good to build up your CV, like doing all the extracurricular stuff at school, showing that. And remember, lawyers have skills, so you're selling your, as a person, you're selling your skills to these law firms. So if you can show that you are like organized, you are proactive, those kind of things law firms can get from your CVs. So if anything you do, if you look at it that way, saying what skill set am I building here, law firms really do look at that stuff. So a little thing like a Saturday job in a bank or in a retail shop, those are like commercial awareness skills, people skills, those kind of things are really important.
And so actually the vast majority of people are very willing to take, 10 minutes out of their day for a phone call or a coffee or a chat about what the job entails, similar to the discussion we're having now. But in terms of building the skills, I think it's just read a lot. And it, again, depends what area of law you're looking at, but in our worlds, having just general commercial awareness, and by that I mean reading the business pages in the newspapers, and not necessarily, I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and get a subscription to the Financial Times, but it's those kind of just watching the news when they're talking about the business or talking about politics impact on business and those kind of things. Because at the end of the day, when we have an awareness of issues for our clients, that makes us far better lawyers. Recruitment people, HR and grad recruitment will look for that kind of commercial awareness. It's quite often a question in interview: how do you demonstrate to me that you have commercial awareness? So what I used to do in that situation is just have 2 or 3 topics that I knew quite a lot of detail about. And actually there's no building that repertoire from, 15 years old onwards. Just having an understanding of those kind of things really, really helps in due course when you come down to an interview.
What skills do you need to possess to succeed in law?
So I think they're basic life skills, really. Communication is key. Like, you need to be able to write properly. I know that sounds really basic, but you need to be able to take information, write it down clearly. You need to be analytical. You need to understand what it is that your client wants. And that doesn't matter whether you do commercial law like Izzy and Piers and I do, or whether you literally work with people on the high street, or, you want to do the criminal thing. What is it that the person you are representing wants from you? That's understanding and analysis. If you're doing the commercial sphere, you need to have commercial awareness. You need to understand your industry. You need to know what is it that are the big themes, like what are banks, what kind of people are banks lending money to, and if you're doing like the other side of it, the criminal and the more like face-to-face stuff, what route are courts taking? Like, what is the government saying about crime? What is it that what is the messaging? So it's good to read and know that stuff. I think the other basic skills of being hardworking, diligent, all of that. When we have trainees coming through systems, so I'm now 11 years qualified. So after doing my traineeship, effectively, I've done 11 years of practice. The best trainees are the hardworking ones, the diligent ones, the thorough ones. I don't speak the Queen's English. I'm not perfectly eloquent all the time, but I'm hardworking, I'm diligent, I'm thorough, I'm really good with people. Like, these are all qualities that you should never underestimate. Again, irrespective of your background or what you do, what experience you have, if you hone those skills, and if you are well read, you've got a general knowledge of the world. I know that sounds really broad, but that is what effectively you're looking for. People who can understand other people.
You can be a complete nerd and sit there and just read proper law, and be a perfectly functioning solicitor. And, there are lots of people like that in our industry. Equally, you can be a complete business development person that actually doesn't really pay much attention to detail and just is bravado. And those people kind of are the bookends of the legal world. But the best lawyers are those in the middle. You really need to have attention to detail in your day-to-day activity, but you also need to be able to relate to people and speak to people. And so,
final advice to young people considering a career in law. Izzy, hit us with your final advice.
Final advice. I think just, try and just talk to as many people as possible. Try and be sure before you go into it that that is definitely what you want to do, because as we've said, it is challenging and it can be really tough and it's a long process. So I think just being really sure that that's the path you want to go down and then just going for it.
I would say perseverance and hard work. They're never going to let you down. Just go, just keep at it. It's hard. And don't, when you get the knockbacks, don't take it personally. I remember applying for work experience, applied to 50 law firms, didn't get anything. And, you know, I still am where I want to be. So just keep at it. That's what I would say.
Really nice. Piers, final thoughts?
I'm going to cheat a bit and just build on Davina's, because I think that's a really important point that we haven't covered in a great deal of detail. Is when applying for law firms, getting the training contract is incredibly difficult, and a lot of it is luck. You know, it is pure luck. Some people just waltz straight in and they get a training contract pretty easily. Other people, it can be, you know, years. And genuinely, I know people that have tried for 7 years and they've paralegaled in order to get, so paralegaling is going into a law firm and working there as kind of a junior, and getting experience in this kind of thing. But it can be really, really challenging just to constantly get pushback. And, you know, there's, we were quite used to getting what we always referred to as PFOs, which were please F off, which was the you know, because you get these letters back from law firms basically saying, thank you for your application, but we're ignoring you. And you know, and Davina said that she applied to 50. I mean, I must have written more than 20 training contracts applications. It just, and these take hours as well. These are long processes. So just appreciate that not everyone is going to be lucky enough for it to go right the first time. Doesn't mean that you're not capable, and it doesn't mean that when you get there you won't be a great success. It is very much just about keeping on and persevering.
Wow, guys, that was absolutely fantastic. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on this show. And I'll say goodbye to you all. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
No worries. Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.